Welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, Advanced English Listening Practice Podcast, topic name is 25 plus C2 level vocabulary on culture and custom.
Hi, everyone. If you're joining us, you're clearly looking to deepen your understanding, to really get under the hood of how societies work.
Exactly. And today, we're not just, listing vocabulary. We're aiming to equip you with conceptual tools. These are like intellectual instruments you need to genuinely dissect societal norms, traditions, and all those complex structures of human behavior.
That's the goal. We've put together, over 25 really sophisticated C2 level terms, and they're specifically chosen for analyzing culture and custom. Think of this as a shortcut, really, to mastering language that goes way beyond simple words like celebration or rule.
Yeah, we're getting into the philosophical, the anthropological nuances here. These words help you avoid those surface-level takes and engage in, truly insightful discussions.
Erudite discourses, even. So that's our mission today.
Right. We're jumping straight in. And we'll start with a core tension, something fundamental to how cultures evolve, how they stabilize, and how they ultimately change. It's this constant push and pull, isn't it?
Right.
Between those who stick to the rules and those who, want to break them.
Let's kick things off with the individual right at the heart of this disruption, the iconoclast. Now, this term, it means much more than just disagreeing. It describes someone who actively criticizes, even attacks, ideas, customs, institutions that are generally accepted, maybe even cherished by the mainstream.
So they're the rebels, the dissenters.
Exactly. Rebels, dissenters, sometimes even called heretics. They're fundamentally challenging the status quo.
And this challenge can take many forms, right? I mean, you see iconoclasts in creative fields, using art, maybe?
Absolutely. Disruptive creativity is a key area. Imagine an artist whose installations are deliberately provocative, maybe challenging religious beliefs or political taboos head-on. They're using their art like intellectual artillery against what the majority holds sacred.
That's art being used for social reform, essentially.
Precisely. And this often is an intellectual rebellion aimed squarely at social reform. Think about, say, an influential feminist writer. They might be labeled an iconoclast because their work systematically dismantles deeply embedded patriarchal customs. It's not just minor criticism, it's a fundamental structural critique of tradition itself, of authority.
Okay, so the iconoclast is the person, then iconoclasm is the action they take.
That's it. Historically, iconoclasm meant the literal rejection or destruction of religious images, things considered heretical. The Byzantine period is the classic example, with widespread state-backed iconoclasm.
Where they systematically destroyed holy artworks.
Yes, a kind of doctrinal purge, controlling belief by controlling the images.
But you're saying the word has modern relevance, too.
Oh, definitely. It speaks powerfully to symbolic erasure today. Think about protests targeting, say, colonial monuments. That's a form of modern iconoclasm. The target isn't just the stone statue. It's the history, the narrative, the authority that monument symbolizes.
So it's about destroying the symbol, not just the object.
Right. It's rejecting the authority or belief system that the symbol represents, one that's no longer accepted. That symbolic destruction is key.
That makes sense. It's an ideological shift made visible. And this kind of act, this modern iconoclasm, it kind of paves the way for something broader, doesn't it? Like counterculture.
Exactly. Counterculture is the collective movement that springs from that kind of opposition. It emerges specifically against the prevailing mainstream norms, values, practices, what we'll soon call mores. It's a whole alternative lifestyle or belief system taking shape.
The 1960s counterculture is the big example everyone thinks of, rejecting materialism, consumerism.
Right. And it wasn't just political disagreement. It expressed itself through lifestyle choices, communal living, different music, clothes, challenging social hierarchies. They were trying to build a parallel value system.
And we see similar things today, maybe expressed differently.
For sure. It's not just aesthetics, like punk challenging conformity. Think about technology. There's a modern digital counterculture pushing hard for data privacy, open source information, encryption. That's a direct stand against government surveillance for corporate data harvesting.
So it's an ideological fight using tech tools, establishing new principles, new precepts around digital life.
Precisely. A tech-driven opposition.
Yeah.
Hashtag 1.2, the established norms, mores, and conventionality.
Okay, let's pivot. We've talked about the challengers, the iconoclasts, and countercultures. What exactly are they pushing back against? You mentioned established norms.
We call these mores. M-O-R-E-S. These are the fundamental customs and values of a society that really characterize it. They're often the unwritten rules, the cultural ethics, the backbone of a community.
They sound powerful, but maybe hard to pin down.
They are, often invisible until someone breaks them. Take Victorian Moors. They dictated incredibly strict rules about public behavior, especially around gender roles and class interactions. That rigid conformity defined the whole era's social structure.
But Moors aren't static, are they? Especially now.
Not at all. It's fascinating. Anthropologists study indigenous Moors to understand community cohesion, things that might change slowly. But think about urban Moors, how people interact in cities, how they date, work. Globalization and tech mean these evolve incredibly fast. What was normal public behavior 10 years ago might seem completely outdated now.
And the act of sticking to these norms, that's conventionality.
Exactly. Conventionality is the conscious adherence to those established customs, practices, standards. It's like following the cultural script. Orthodoxy in practice.
It gets a bad rap sometimes, right? Seen as stifling creativity or progress.
It often does. In art history, Victorian conventionality definitely held back artistic freedom, favoring safe realism over emerging modern styles. Artists often have to deliberately rebel against conventionality to innovate.
But it must serve a purpose, otherwise why would it persist?
Oh, it has a crucial structural function. Conventionality often signals competence, belonging, trustworthiness within a group. Think about corporate conventionality, the suits, the formal meetings, the specific etiquette.
It shows you know the rules of the game.
Precisely. It signals you understand the group's mores and can be trusted. It's a subtle way of maintaining social hierarchy, a kind of gatekeeping in professional settings, for instance.
All right, let's shift from that tension, that conflict, to looking at the architecture of society itself. How do cultures actually formalize their values and set boundaries for behavior? We've got some great vocabulary for this. Hashtag, tag, 2.1 principles and philosophy, credo and precept.
Well, for a culture to stick together, it usually needs some kind of central guiding philosophy. And that's where the term credo comes in. A credo is essentially a formal statement of beliefs or principles. It could be religious, philosophical, even corporate.
Like a mission statement almost, or a doctrine?
Yeah, it functions like a doctrine, a manifesto, a shared worldview that holds the group together. Its scope is pretty broad.
So religious credos would be the big ones, uniting whole communities in faith.
Absolutely. They form the ideological bedrock, defining a community's relationship with the divine, with each other, providing continuity. But the concept scales down too.
How so?
Think about a company. A successful tech startup might have a founding credo emphasizing, say, radical innovation or ethical sourcing. That credo then guides everything from product design to hiring. It's their set of non-negotiables.
Okay. And even individuals can have one.
Definitely. Your personal credo, that set of principles you won't compromise on, guides your daily choices, your actions. It's like your internal ethical compass.
So if the credo is the big picture, the why, what about the how? The specific rules?
That's where precept comes in. P-R-C-E-P-T.
Book BK.
A precept is a specific guiding principle designed to give moral guidance or provide a concrete basis for behavior. Think of them as maxims or tenets drawn directly from the broader credo.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Look at Buddhist precepts. They specifically advocate things like nonviolence, truthful speech, mindfulness. These are concrete rules for living, stemming from the wider Buddhist philosophy or credo.
And these apply beyond religion, too.
Oh, absolutely. Legal precepts are the foundation of justice systems everywhere. They're the basic laws and established rules that govern how society interacts, maintaining order.
I can see how that works. Even in education, maybe. A mentor passing on their core precepts.
Exactly. A mentor's key precepts. Their specific rules on how to conduct research ethically or approach problem solving can shape their apprentice's entire professional outlook. Their actionable guidelines derive from a core belief. Hashtag 2.2, the ultimate boundary. Taboo.
Okay, so we have guiding principles, but what about the absolute no-go areas, the things that are just forbidden?
That's the realm of taboo. T-A-B-O. A taboo is a social or religious custom that prohibits or heavily restricts a particular practice. Violating a taboo usually carries serious consequences, either social or spiritual. It's a cultural red line built on a deep sense of aversion or prohibition.
We often think of historical examples, right? Like dietary taboos, not eating pork in certain religions, for example.
Yes, those are clear-cut examples often laid out in scripture or long-standing tradition. But some of the most powerful taboos today are actually unwritten social ones.
Like what?
Well, think about the persistent workplace taboo around discussing salaries openly. It's rarely a formal rule, but it's a powerful social precept that controls behavior. And, it often benefits the existing power structures by limiting transparency for employees.
Right, it maintains an information imbalance. And the consequence for breaking a taboo, that's what really enforces it.
Absolutely. That's what gives the taboo its power. Whether it's an ancient religious law or a modern corporate norm, breaking a taboo often leads to swift and severe social ostracism. You risk being marked as an outsider, someone who doesn't respect the shared mores, and that can mean complete exclusion from the group.
Okay, since our goal here is really about gaining tools to analyze culture, let's turn to how cultures are actually studied, documented, and sometimes preserved. What's the academic toolkit look like? Hashtag 3.1 immersive study, ethnography.
Well, the gold standard for really deep immersive study is ethnography. This is the method of studying people and cultures through direct, first-hand observation and interaction. It often involves what's called participant observation. The researcher literally lives within the community for an extended period.
So it's not just surveys or statistics, it's about being there.
Exactly. It requires significant time commitment. And it's vital because it lets researchers uncover complexities that other methods would completely miss.
Like what sort of things?
Well, a detailed ethnography of, say, a remote nomadic group might reveal incredibly intricate, unwritten rules about kinship, who owes what to whom, how resources are really shared, the actual hierarchy for decisions, things that might totally contradict any formal written accounts.
And it's not just for remote tribes, presumably. You can do this in cities, too.
Oh, absolutely. Urban ethnography is a huge field. It explores subcultures within cities, the dynamics of urban life, social divisions, how microgroups form identities. Think about studying the unspoken rules of interaction within a specific online gaming community or the culture on a Wall Street trading floor.
So it's about understanding the mores from the inside, wherever that inside might be.
Precisely. And the value of this kind of documentation, especially now with globalization, is just immense. Ethnography often captures records of vanishing rituals, endangered languages, unique social structures before they disappear. It plays a crucial role in cultural preservation by creating that detailed historical record. Hashtag 3.2 heritage and adherence, folklore and ritualism.
And a lot of what ethnography captures must relate to folklore, right? The stories, the traditions.
Yes, folklore is central. These are the traditional beliefs, customs, stories, legends, passed down usually by word of mouth through generations. It's that deep well of oral tradition.
It sounds like the heart of a culture's identity, in a way.
It often is. Think about Irish folklore, filled with mythical figures like fairies or leprechauns and moral tales about luck or hardship. These stories aren't just entertainment. Folklore often encodes ancestral wisdom through proverbs, cautionary tales, allegories. They teach you how to live according to the community's mores.
And how do cultures keep this folklore, these beliefs alive? Is that when ritualism comes in?
Exactly. Ritualism is the act of sticking very strictly to old customs and ceremonies. There's often an intense focus on performing things exactly the traditional way. It's a ceremonial adherence put into practice.
There's a positive side to that, surely, connecting with the past.
Definitely. Think about major cultural festivals. The meticulous performance of ancient rites and ritualism reinforces ancestral connections, emphasizes continuity over centuries. Anthropologists often point to the positive psychological impact of collective ritualism on community bonding and cohesion.
But is there a downside? Can it become too rigid?
There's a critical perspective, yes. Excessive ritualism can become just going through the motions, an empty gesture, where the original meaning, the credo behind the ritual, gets lost. The culture can then risk becoming stuck, resistant to necessary change or innovation. It ties back to that danger of extreme conventionality we discussed earlier.
Right. Culture is never really static, is it? When societies bump up against each other, those mores and taboos we talked about must come under pressure. So this next section seems to be about the vocabulary for interaction, mixing, and change. Hashtag 4.1 hybridity and fusion syncretism.
Precisely. And a really powerful concept here is syncretism. syncretism. This describes the merging or blending of diverse cultural elements, styles, traditions, beliefs to create something genuinely new and unique. It's about fusion, hybridity, the creative result of cross-cultural contact.
Food seems like an obvious place to see this.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Culinary syncretism gives us fantastic examples. Caribbean cuisine, for instance, is a masterclass in syncretism. It blends indigenous ingredients and techniques with African and European influences brought over centuries. The result isn't African or European or purely indigenous. It's a distinct hybrid regional cuisine.
And it happens in belief systems, too.
Definitely. Religious syncretism is common, where beliefs and practices from different traditions fuse. Voodoo is a powerful example, combining West African spiritual traditions, ancestor worship, with elements drawn from Catholicism, saints, iconography, rituals. It creates a unique and resilient spiritual system.
And in the arts as well, I imagine.
Hugely important in the arts. Artistic syncretism drives innovation. Think of mixed media art or music that blends traditional folk instruments from one culture with electronic beats from another, or architecture that pulls from different historical styles. Syncretism is all about creating something new from the combination of different sources. Hashtag tag 4.2 layers of identity, multiculturalism, and subculture.
Okay, so when you have lots of these different cultures living side by side, interacting, perhaps syncretizing, what do we call that environment?
That environment is often described through the lens of multiculturalism. This isn't just the fact of diversity, but the belief that cultural diversity within a society should be respected, even actively fostered. It's a philosophy of cultural pluralism.
So it can be a policy, not just a description.
Yes. Look at Canada, for example. They adopted multiculturalism as official policy, promoting immigrant integration while also protecting minority languages and cultural practices. The idea is often described as a cultural mosaic, distinct pieces keeping their shape while contributing to the larger picture.
And there are benefits to this approach.
Proponents argue there are many. Urban multiculturalism clearly enriches cities. Think of diverse food scenes, different festivals, cross-pollination of ideas in arts and business. Education promoting multiculturalism is also seen as a way to combat biases like ethnocentrism.
But even within a big multicultural society, people still form smaller groups, right? With their own distinct styles or values.
Absolutely. And that's where subculture comes in. A subculture is a smaller group existing within the larger culture, but sharing its own distinctive values, norms, behaviors, often deliberately different from the mainstream. A niche group identity.
Like goths, maybe? Or gamers?
Perfect examples. The goth subculture expresses identity through specific fashion, music, aesthetics. The gamer subculture, especially online, has its own language, social rules, mores, and forums. They consciously step away from conventionality.
And what's the function of these subcultures?
Often they serve as spaces to challenge mainstream norms creatively. They let individuals explore identities or practices that might sit outside, establish mores or even taboos. And sometimes innovations that start in a subculture eventually get absorbed into the mainstream. They can be incubators for cultural change. Hashtag tag 4.3, the process of change, acculturational.
So when individuals move between cultures, or when a subculture interacts heavily with the dominant one, there must be a process of adaptation. Is there a term for that?
Yes, the adjective is acculturational. It describes anything relating to the complex process of adapting to the norms, customs, and practices of a different or dominant culture. It's about the journey of cultural adjustment.
That sounds like it could be really challenging.
It absolutely is. Immigrants and refugees face intense acculturational challenges. You're adapting everything: language, food, social etiquette, work culture, understanding political systems, unspoken mannerisms. It's a huge undertaking.
So sociologists must study this quite a bit.
Yes, there's a lot of research.
Yeah.
Acculturational studies often look at the psychological and emotional aspects, the stress involved, and they frequently focus on how people develop hybrid identities. You're often not fully rooted in your original culture anymore, but maybe not fully assimilated into the new one either. You operate in a blend, a sort of personal syncretism.
It makes sense why support systems are needed then to help people navigate that acculturational process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Government programs, community groups often aim to ease acculturational stress and integration, recognizing the systemic difficulties involved in bridging those cultural gaps.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly again. How do cultures formalize things like status, family lines, and core beliefs? We've got some C2 terms for looking at social organization and how things are communicated publicly. Hashtag 5.1 family structures, matrilineal, patrilineal, endogamy.
Right. Kinship is fundamental. One way societies organize lineage is through matrilineal systems. That means descent and inheritance are traced exclusively through the mother's side. It's mother-line descent.
And that impacts gender roles, presumably.
Significantly. Matrilineal societies often give women considerable social authority. They might control property, and family status is defined through their line. This can translate into greater female influence in domestic and economic spheres, which contrasts sharply with many other historical systems.
What's the alternative, the more common one?
That would be the patrilineal system. Here, descent and inheritance flow through the father-line descent, sometimes called agnatic kinship.
And this is where we often see inherited gender biases, sons favored for inheritance leadership.
Often, yes. Historically, patrilineal structures frequently led to sons inheriting property and titles, and male lines dominating political leadership in clans or dynasties. It's also why in many cultures, surnames traditionally follow the male line.
Okay, so that's about tracing lineage. What about rules around marriage itself?
That brings us to endogamy. E-N-D-O-G-M-Y. This is the practice of marrying strictly within one's own social group, whether that's defined by ethnicity, religion, caste, or class. It's the principle of in-group marriage.
And why do groups practice endogamy? What's the purpose?
Often, it's about structural preservation. In smaller, perhaps isolated communities, it might be seen as preserving cultural purity or unique traditions. In religious groups, endogamy is often practiced to strengthen faith bonds within the family and community, ensuring spiritual continuity and preventing outside beliefs from diluting the core identity.
Though increasing mobility and multiculturalism must challenge these practices quite a bit today.
Absolutely. It puts pressure on endogamous traditions. Hashtag 5.2 worldviews and imagery, animism and totem.
All right, let's look at belief systems again, but maybe from a different angle. What about worldviews that see spirit in nature itself?
That worldview is captured by the term animism. This is the belief that spirits inhabit natural elements, rivers, mountains, trees, as well as objects and all living beings. The world is seen as fundamentally spirited, alive.
So nature isn't just resources, it's inhabited.
Exactly. For a culture practicing animism, a river isn't just water. It's a living entity, possibly with a soul, deserving respect, maybe even offerings. The folklore and art in animistic cultures often feature sacred animals and plants, placing humans within a web of spiritual life, not necessarily dominant over it.
It sounds quite contemporary in a way. Echoes of modern environmentalism.
There's a fascinating resonance there, yes.
Yeah.
Modern ecological movements, emphasizing the inherent value of ecosystems beyond just human use, do echo the respect for nature found in animism.
And when a group has a really strong connection to one particular natural element or animal,
That often involves a totem. A totem is a natural object, usually an animal or plant, that's considered sacred and serves as a powerful symbol or emblem for a specific group, a clan, a family, a tribe.
like the eagle totem for a Native American tribe, representing strength or vision.
Precisely. It becomes a sacred emblem used in rituals, art, storytelling. Families might have totems representing their lineage and ancestral spirits, connecting them to the natural and spiritual world through that specific symbol.
You mentioned a surprising contemporary connection earlier.
Ah, yes. The idea that modern corporate logos sometimes function like corporate totems. Think about it. They're unique, often protected symbols that rally a group employees, customers around a shared identity and set of values, much like a traditional totem does for a clan, just in a secular commercial context. It's a powerful emblem of collective identity. Hashtag 5.3 public display, pageantry and mannerism.
Okay, so culture isn't just internal beliefs or family lines. It's often very public, very visible, right? Sometimes spectacular.
Definitely. And for that spectacular display, we have the term pageantry. This refers to elaborate displays, ceremonial spectacles, grand public events involving pomp, grandeur, visual magnificence.
Like royal weddings or Olympic opening ceremonies.
Perfect examples. Royal weddings use opulent pageantry parades, historical costumes, elaborate rituals to reinforce the monarchy's legitimacy and tradition. Olympic ceremonies are massive displays of national pageantry, using spectacle to project national identity and pride on a global stage.
Festivals too, I suppose, with dances, costumes, floats.
Absolutely. Festivals are often rich in pageantry, making cultural heritage visible and ensuring the public continuation of ritualism through vibrant, expressive displays.
Now, what about smaller scale, individual or group styles of behavior, distinctive habits?
That falls under mannerism. A mannerism is a distinctive style, a specific way of behaving, or a habitual trait that characterizes either an individual or sometimes a whole group or era.
So cultural mannerisms could be things like bowing in Japan or specific ways of greeting.
Exactly. Those are learned social etiquettes, mannerisms reflecting respect or hierarchy, things you pick up through acculturation. But mannerism also applies in art. An artist might have a stylistic mannerism, like always using elongated figures or specific brushstrokes that defines their unique style or belongs to a particular art historical period, like mannerism itself.
And you mentioned one more related term for the social setting.
Ah, yes, the soiree. S-O-I-R-E-E. It's more specific than just party. It usually implies an elegant evening gathering, often for purposes like networking, intellectual discussion, or cultural mingling, particularly among a certain social class.
So it's a specific kind of social event where culture and status are performed and negotiated?
Precisely. The soiree is a space where social hierarchies can be reinforced, alliances formed, and cultural tastes displayed, often governed by quite subtle unspoken mores and mannerisms.
Okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, we really need to touch upon the forces that hinder cultural understanding, the negative side, the biases and fears that create conflict. Hashtag 6.1 internal bias, ethnocentrism.
Yes, it's crucial. Let's start with ethnocentrism. This is that deeply ingrained belief in the inherent superiority of one's own culture. It's basically a cultural superiority complex.
So you judge everyone else by your own culture's standards.
Exactly. It's a cognitive bias where your own cultural framework becomes the absolute yardstick against which all other cultures are measured and usually found lacking.
The historical impact of that must be huge. Colonialism, for instance.
Absolutely devastating. Ethnocentrism provided a core ideological justification for colonial expansion and imperialism. The belief that the colonizers' culture, religion, political system, their mores, were inherently superior was used to legitimize dominating and attempting to civilize other peoples.
And does it still cause problems today, in everyday life or business?
Oh, constantly. Think about global business teams. If a manager from one culture assumes their way of handling punctuality or communication styles or negotiating contracts is just the right way and dismisses other approaches, that's ethnocentrism in action. It creates friction, mistrust, and hinders effective collaboration and mutual respect.
So how do you combat it?
Education and exposure are key. Learning about other cultures, understanding the internal logic behind their mores, their credos and precepts, helps dismantle that automatic assumption that your way is the only right way. It challenges that group centrism. Hashtag 6.2 external fear, xenophobia.
Okay, so ethnocentrism is judging from within. What about fear directed outwards? Fear of the foreign?
That's xenophobia. Xenophobia. This is a profound, often irrational fear or hatred directed specifically at foreigners or foreign cultures. It's not just intellectual bias, it's a deeper, often more visceral cultural intolerance.
And this tends to flare up at certain times.
Yes, it often acts like a social barometer. Rates of xenophobia frequently increase during times of economic hardship, social upheaval, or perceived national crisis. The fear and anxiety get projected onto outsiders, migrants, refugees, visible minority communities.
And this fear can actually shape government actions.
Tragically, yes. Policies rooted in xenophobia can lead to things like restrictive immigration laws, increased border security theater, discriminatory practices within legal and social systems. It fuels prejudice and creates enormous acculturational hurdles for newcomers.
So tackling xenophobia requires more than just education.
It requires active advocacy for inclusivity, highlighting the positive contributions of diversity and multiculturalism, and directly challenging the fear-based narratives that drive cultural intolerance. It's about fostering empathy and understanding, not just tolerance. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow, that was quite the journey through some really complex cultural vocabulary, a genuine deep dive. We've gone from the disruptive force of the iconoclast to the stabilizing, sometimes problematic structures like patrilineal systems and the subtle power of taboo.
That's right. Hopefully these 25 plus C2 terms are now firmly lodged in your mental toolkit. They really do allow you to add layers of sophistication to how you discuss culture, whether you're analyzing syncretism in food trends or the dangers of ethnocentrism in international relations.
It definitely gives you a sharper lens. And as we close, here's something for you, our listeners, to think about. Which of these powerful concepts we discussed today, maybe the defiance embodied by the iconoclast, or perhaps the rigid adherence of conventionality, which one do you think best captures a core conflict playing out in society right now? And maybe more personally, what credo guides your own response to that conflict?
That's a great question to mull over. And of course, if this deep dive into cultural concepts captivated you and you found real value in building this advanced vocabulary,
then please do consider liking this podcast, sharing it with others who might benefit, and subscribing to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel to stay informed about future deep dives.
keep building that knowledge.
And we'll catch you on the next deep dive.